Michelle Faust is a Charleston County School District parent and an education advocate who wants to bring her community experience to the Charleston County School Board, where she wants to represent District 8 on the school board. I talked one-on-one with Michelle for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Michelle Faust, welcome to Quintin's
Yes.
Close-Ups.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you are a parent, a mother, and I believe the chair of the District 9 Education Committee.
Not currently the chair of
Oh,
the Mount
boom.
Zion School Improvement Council.
Okay.
Yep.
Nonetheless, you've been involved in education for some time now. And of
Mhm.
course, you are now running for the Charleston County School Board to represent District 8, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So tell me, why the Charleston County School Board? Why now?
Yeah, now because for the past 12 years, we have seen some incredible improvements to options and educational opportunities in this district. But Quintin, there's still a lot more work, a lot more needs and wants of the community that have not yet been implemented, and frankly, um, for Johns Island D8, D23, all the areas that D8 encompasses, it is just my belief that all children in all of these districts should have access to excellent educational opportunities in their neighborhood.
What educational opportunities are available to them right now?
There are a portfolio of schools in the D8 district that range, test scores are not an indication necessarily of culture or fans of the school, but they range from unsatisfactory to excellent in D8. So, and we have different models. We have a Montessori school. We have arts infused elementary school. So there are different opportunities there, but there are still gaps in programming and classes that our neighbors and other districts do have access to.
So where are the gaps right now, and how long have those gaps been there, and how do you close those gaps?
Well, and I think every community is different. Every community has different needs and wants. These are communities and that have not historically had access to some of the partnerships with the recreation and after school programming that are available in other parts of Charleston County, sort of as development has occurred and things like that. And honestly, I believe academics first and foremost, and I believe in it, but I also believe that a lot of educational opportunities occur outside in the classroom. We learn a lot on baseball fields, on tennis courts, on football fields, and those are a very important part of the portfolio.
So now that you have those missing partnerships, Ms. Michelle, if you were to be elected on the school board, how would you help the school district actually create private partnerships so that those kids can get those programs that are offered in East Cooper or North Charleston?
Right. And I'm a little hesitant to use the word private because these are mostly public city and county partnerships. So those are public entities, not private. But for example, we have a very unique opportunity on Johns Island specifically because there is a new elementary school being built, Johns Island Elementary. And that leaves us with an entire building, which will be the former Mount Zion Elementary, that could house a range of opportunities for not just for kids, for teachers, for families, for early childhood, summer camps. I mean, there's just so many possibilities, and I don't want to say what I think those are because I really think that is something that the community has to give input on what the most important thing for them in the use of that building could be.
What are you hearing from the community right now that could actually help the community at this moment?
Around schools?
Yes, ma'am. And the use of that soon to be vacant building once the new Johns
Yes.
Island Elementary comes.
Yes. So there's a couple things there. There's certainly very difficult waiting list all over for early childhood daycare education. There's some opportunities for or needs around as recruiting incentives for teachers to have daycares for their own children that are close to where they are employed. And then also in these G8, there is a lot of conversation. We've been, as makes sense, sort of to start when you're thinking about how to get kids in their neighborhood schools, you focus on elementary. And now there really is a lot of conversation in these communities about that K through 12 and really focusing on middle school and high school and what programs are needed to compete with larger schools in Mount Pleasant or in other parts of the district. Some of those educational opportunities are not yet available in these communities.
What ideal programs that are in East Cooper and North Charleston, where I live, what programs would be ideal for District 8 right now?
District 8 is talking a lot about access to additional AP coursework. So we have some magnet programs in Hot Gap specifically,
Cool.
And the transition for kids who want to look at those programs to St. John's, opportunities there around AP, and just continuing to identify any gaps even around athletics and things like that in terms of space and fields. There's some work that's being done there now, but there's certainly more that could be done there as well.
What gaps do you want to close in athletics when it comes to District 8?
They're working on physical space, fields, and things like that to close some gaps. But I think, Quintin, really to get more kids involved in athletics and get more teams and more different acts, that different programs, tennis, things that are available in East Cooper that are not currently available here, is going to really revolve around the academic piece and getting more kids in those schools. Because the more kids that go, the more chance you're going to have volleyball players in the cohort, tennis players, and that gives everybody an opportunity to participate in this kind of.
So when you close those gaps, how many students from District 8 do you hope to add to these particular schools that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so we look at the district's live in, live out report. We see upwards of 400 or 500 kids that are zoned to go to high schools in our district that are currently going elsewhere. And when I say 400 or 500 kids, I mean at both St. John's and Baptist Hill. So we're talking 1,000 kids who have left to go somewhere else for various reasons. And just to be clear,
Yes.
I know it's a very difficult and personal choice for families when deciding what the right educational model for their children is very personal. So I understand and don't want to change that, but certainly we would love for them to choose the school in which they are zoned.
When you look at Baptist Hill, when you look at Hot Gap Middle, Angel Oak Elementary, for instance, what model would be ideal for those students? Would it be the Montessori? Would it be, as you mentioned earlier, arts and culture?
Yeah, I think it varies. I think the community put some recommendations to have some different kinds of options back about many years ago, when I first got involved as a public education advocate, and Law decided for their community that Montessori was the right fit. We have many Johns Islanders who go there. Angel Oak is the arts infused school. I think having a diversity within the portfolio give families an opportunity to select what's right. And sometimes for families, Quintin, that have multiple children, one model doesn't fit the whole family. And so, you may have a child in Montessori and a child in arts infused or something like that. So I think what the portfolio is really quite amazing. And it gives a lot of opportunities for folks to select what is the right fit for their family.
Now, how many of these students have actually gone to these schools and are actually in the same family that have different models and they go to those schools?
I don't know what the numbers are there, but what I do know is that on my first meeting about 12 years ago, Frierson had 86 kids. Angel Oak had 350 kids. And today, Quintin, Frierson is on a waiting list for students. And Angel Oak is busting at the seams. We can't get a new school fast enough. They have over 700 children. So we have a lot of fans of schools out here. E.B. Ellington,
Sure.
I have seen an incredible growth in the number of students attending that school. And we're just they have a lot of fans, and when you have fans, you get a lot of support, and that's really what we're seeing.
Okay, so when you talk about Friesen and well, you mentioned too with the waiting list, and then obviously EBL, excuse me, I should know that. But where exactly are these people coming from? Are they coming from District 8? Are they coming from different districts just wanting a good quality education at those schools?
No, they're coming from District 8.
Mm,
We're seeing, I first moved in my community, we didn't have a bus stop because we wouldn't have
mm.
enough kids. They were going all different places. We were all leaving and going places. And I really, honestly, whether you choose public school or you don't choose public school, school serve as anchors in the community for lots of things. Our children go there. We go to baseball games. We go there to vote, so they house community events whether you have children in schools or not. And today, we see bus stops, and again, it's really around being fans, really around a movement of um, people in D8 wanting to not get in traffic and leave and go somewhere else off the island, but really to really focus and strengthen neighborhood schools, and that's wholeheartedly um, what I support around public school.
Well, let me just ask you a basic question because Charleston has
Yeah.
grown tremendously. I was born and
Hmm.
raised here, but
Yeah.
let me ask you: when it comes to District 8, what exactly is that pace of growth right now there?
The pace of growth for Johns Island is the fastest growing place in Charleston County. So this is a place that is seeing housing go up. You drive by, you see lots of new housing, lots of new neighborhoods going up, which was what is driving additionally the need for the building of a new elementary school.
So, district wide, what do you see as far as the district's growth projections for District 8?
Yeah, I don't have those in front of me. I know the capital programs have some metrics that they bring out. They look at a lot of things to try to determine what the growth is. But the new school is being built to house 700 children, and and I think where the the school board after the November 5th election will have to really get focused on numbers and projections for growth around middle and high school.
So, what is the current growth for those middles and high schools right there on District 8, in District 8?
We're not, you don't see the growth in the enrollment like you do in the elementary schools
Mm.
because, again, when new programs were implemented, when focus was on really getting families in at those early grades, and they have not, um, you're just now starting to see that those huge numbers of influx of people getting into starting middle school. So that will be the next focus.
Now, when you do get these new programs in, how many more students do you project to go to those particular schools in District 8?
Well, Quentin, I think knowing that we have 400 or 500 kids leaving every day to go to high school somewhere else, we at least would want to start there and see what is missing. What is missing to get half of those kids to choose to stay in their neighborhood? But and so that would be those would certainly be the easy low hanging fruit numbers to go talk with those families and see what it is that made them choose to go off to go to a different district to go to school.
And I can tell you a personal story from back in the
Yeah.
early 2000s when I was attending Burke High School here on the peninsula, and I wanted to go
Mhm.
to Wando High School, but that didn't work out. The constituent school board said no at the time. But how many,
Oh.
but how many of those students who are actually living in District 8 are leaving District 8 to go to other high schools within the school district?
Well, and those are the live out, the live in, live out numbers. And then that's what I'm saying. It's over 400 students for St. John's that go to
Yes.
James Island to go to
Wow.
James Island who go to school in the morning. And so we have folks who talk a lot about traffic on Johns Island. It's
Sure.
one of our besides other than schools, traffic second probably the number one most important conversation or talked about conversation. And so where kids go to school has a huge impact on traffic. And so we've got over 400 kids leaving Johns Island to go to James Island for school, for high school in the morning.
And I want to get back to that in just a second, but let me ask you, what is the actual graduation rate when it comes to St. John High School?
Well, I think it's a number that they're working on. It has definitely improved. They were on the state's list, and they're not on that list anymore. And I think, Quentin, a couple things. It goes back to having fans, right? We have schools that are not excellent schools according to state report cards. They're not. But when you talk to families and kids who go to St. John's, they feel like the adults in the room care about them. They have incredible staff. And sometimes what we read on a state report card is not a reflection of what is happening inside of the building. And I think um, that's why those conversations are really important. And St. John's also houses some special programs for children who are on a certificate program that are not, part of the high school graduation, and that's a very important piece of that school. And there's no interest in changing that, but it does impact graduation rates.
Wow. So has there been any change in that graduation rate over the past 5 years, especially with what we just went through with the pandemic and the COVID?
Yes, certainly. The state of South Carolina had them on their list of schools because their graduation was low, but they are no longer on that list.
Okay.
They have made considerable improvements to those metrics, and they're talking about a lot of conversation about AP courses at St. John. So there's a lot of great things happening over there.
Sorry about the bugs here, but let me ask
No,
you, still summer in Charleston, but let me
yeah.
ask you, how many of those AP courses are being offered right now at St. John's?
I don't. There's a and for me as well. There's some confusion within from parents around the difference between AP and dual credit and what might be the right thing. So I think those are conversations that really need to happen because dual credit has some advantages and AP has some advantages, and there's been a big push in the district and from families to who prefer dual credit over AP. So I don't think saying, oh, well, there's this many or that many is a real reflection of whether the school has the right programs. And again, it's really around what makes sense, how we differentiate what is best for a student in terms of dual credit or AP.
So at that particular school, what programs make sense to the students and the parents right now?
Well, what I think I don't, those are further conversations I really have. I don't want to speak for parents in middle
Sure,
school. I
sure,
know
sure.
that they had asked for some AP courses that have teachers who have the training to support them, but then there are also parents who are saying, well, perhaps AP isn't the right thing. Maybe dual credit is the thing that thing. So I think there really needs to be some community conversations with the district to say what's the difference, what's preferred, what paths look. Why would a student want to choose AP over dual credit and vice versa, and what makes sense? Again, that's a really really personal decision, I think, for kids and families.
With those improvements at that particular school, where did they see those improvements? Was it reading, writing, arithmetic?
I don't have their actual data in front of me, but I those are the metrics that the state uses. So
Mm.
we look at school culture, we look at career and college readiness, we look at math and reading. So they're the same metrics for every school, and they've had to make some gains in all of those areas in order to come off that state list.
And I want to get back to that in just a second, but let me ask you, what percentage of students at that particular school, St. John's, scored a C or higher on the algebra, biology, or English gateway course assessments for the end of course, say 2023-2023 semester?
Quentin, I don't have the data in front of me, so I don't want to speak something that I don't have in front of me. What I do know
Yes, ma'am.
is they have a Rising School Improvement Council. They have a St. John's Alliance that was just formed to bring back the homecoming parade. They have parents who are engaged and want to be involved, who are asking the questions about AP and dual credit. And that's what it takes to start. They have parent engagement. They have an incredible um, engagement of their alumni. I was at a meeting there last night to talk about planning of the parade. And that's those things right there, that community buy in and support is going to help transcend any reading and math, we're gonna figure it out.
But let me ask you this, then. Were there any growth in reading and in the MAP results from a couple of years ago?
Yeah, to get off that state list, they have to grow. They have to demonstrate that they are getting kids college and career ready, and so they are now no longer on the state list. So they are definitely hitting those metrics to do that.
Now, I know you mentioned earlier, obviously, about reading and math, of course. So, and obviously, the experience that most of those teachers have when it comes to with obviously education. So, what is the average year of experience of a teacher at St. John's High School?
Those are printed on our state report cards, the state report cards that the state puts out, so you can look at the average number of years that teachers remain at the school and their experience. Again, I don't have the state report cards in front of me for this conversation, but we can certainly look at those
Sure.
and see. Yep.
Now, what is the retention rate right now for all teachers in District 8?
Again, well, just going into schools, going in the school improvement council, going to high school, I again don't have that state report card information, but schools, we're seeing the same faces this year that we saw last, many of the same faces, same leaders from last year, the same principals at these schools. So there's obviously some key folks and key positions, especially school leadership, that have continued on. But the state report card and the district will have the data on those things that you're asking about.
Now, you mentioned earlier, obviously, about those teachers getting those students ready for career readiness and whatnot. So, what is actually have any of those students met those benchmarks when it comes to the ACT tests that I took, and all these other ones?
Many students have met. A few years ago, we had a St. John student who went to Princeton on a full ride scholarship. So there's plenty of success stories, and I think it's really important when we talk about schools. It's a pet peeve of mine when I hear adults say schools are failing, because kids are not failing. These kids are not failing. They go to school every day, and they are not. When you tell someone they're going to a failing school, it sort of sets expectations for what the output for a kid. So there's that, but also it's just when we also talk about professions or things that you can do when you come out of high school, whether you want to be a doctor and lawyer, that's great, but there's a real need for lots of things: plumbers, military, trades. And so I think it's really important about how we define success, right? There's a need for all of those things, and they're all just as important. And so we have to make sure that as adults, that's how our conversations are being heard.
So in District 8, Ms. Michelle, how many trade programs are needed right now? I remember back at Burke, we had it back in 1999 and 2000, and that was
Yeah.
unfortunately taken away. But where do you need trade programs right now in District 8?
The District 8 shares their trade programs with the CAS in West Ashley, so kids have access to attend over there, which is pretty new, and lots of exciting things that the folks who work that can talk about. But there's a lot of incredible opportunities there, and there's also a lot of incredible opportunities that kids are doing who are even attending school virtually with paid internships that.
Wow.
Many of our manufacturers. So there's a lot of paths. I think having access to lots of different options in the portfolio is really to serve the needs of so many is really important. And I think there are several paths for students in D8.
So I don't know if this is still continuing because obviously we're out of COVID right now, thank God in heaven. But
Yeah,
let me ask you
right.
this: how many students are still attending school virtually versus in person?
Right. I don't. Again, I don't. I didn't. I don't have numbers on that but I there. I mean, there obviously are kids who still attend virtually, but not so much for COVID. But
Sure.
there are kids who who have other passions in life that or are traveling abroad, that are attending school virtually. So I think there are, but to have that option, Quentin, I just think that Charleston County Schools has done an incredible job of for families that is needed and they don't want to homeschool, having that option available with such it's an amazing option for families who want to utilize it. And it's just a really incredible thing that Charleston County Schools can offer.
So, how many students are actually being homeschooled right now in your district?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure that we would know. I don't know the answer to that. It'll be part of that live-in reports. I don't want to guess on in data.
Now, earlier you talked about some of the, well, a lot of people call it failing schools. Some people want to call it underperforming schools. So, how many underperforming schools do you have in District 8?
Yeah, so in District 8, we have about you mean that meet the unsatisfactory mark? 5 rate below average or unsatisfactory of the 13 schools in District 8.
So, where is that achievement gap, for lack of a better word, between the minority students and non-minority students?
I mean, that's something, the achievement gap is something that's constantly talked to as I listen to board meetings as a community member and measured. We have, 13 schools, 5 below. That's certainly the focus. The new weighted student funding budget will help. Huge supporter of that. That is incredible. We'll definitely hope to address some needs there at those schools that will receive additional funding that have the unsatisfactory rating. So I'll really be interested to watch and see how that funding is used at those individual schools, because they'll have the opportunity to really focus on the needs and wants of those particular cohort of students in that school, those schools. So that's could be a game changer, Quentin. Could be a game changer.
Those 5 schools that are currently underperforming, that is, in District 8, which one of those schools would be successful under the Reimagine Schools proposal if that were to be the case?
The Reimagine School proposal, I'm familiar with that. A few years ago was, I would say, brought forth in a way that did not foster trust in the constituents. And there were many meetings that were out here about the Reimagine proposal. And what I want to say about that is that it was clear that this community does not want the way that Reimagine was proposed is not the right fit for this community based on what we heard at meetings that I attended from teachers, from parents, and that there is not an interest in any sort of privatization of any of these D8 schools. That came loud and clear during the Reimagine proposal.
Well, let me ask you this. If you were to go back and have discussions about that, what would you tweak in order to make that proposal a success and that later the people in that district would accept?
I think folks in DA are open to privatization. I think that's just the key takeaway. That was loud and clear for me. Learning from as a community member along with my community about what the proposed were. I think that there were some partnerships in terms of wraparound services, mental health services, things like that were sort of on back pages of Reimagine that are in place, or we heard over and over again that people wanted after COVID more access to mental health services and that kind of thing. But in terms of any perceived effort for privatization of schools, loud and clear, that is not something that overwhelmingly, the majority of D8 residents, community members are interested in.
Hypothetically speaking, if those schools were to be privatized, how would that help the schools then?
Well, Quentin, I'm just going to say this. I don't want to speak hypothetically, because in this role, in the role that I am seeking, which is to be on the Charleston County School Board representing District 8, that I would advocate to not privatize schools, because the communities have been loud and clear that that is not what is going to strengthen neighborhood schools in D8.
Speaking of the school board, what are the three key roles of this Charleston County School Board member?
Okay. Key roles for success. Key roles for success.
You can tell me that. You can tell me
Yeah, key roles. Yeah.
whatever.
So I think the most important thing is that that being transparency fosters trust and accountability, and living here in D8 for a number of years. When the school board is not transparent and we don't have that trust, it is very difficult to have conversations that can lead us to um, a place that we can come together and work for the good of families and kids. And so it's really being transparent as a school board member, so that folks can hold you accountable and foster that communication and trust, and also to be accessible so that you are able to get continual feedback on the needs and wants of what is needed in these specific communities.
You obviously talk about transparency. Let me ask you just bluntly, when it comes to this particular election, are you in any way associated with Moms for Liberty?
Okay, I am not a member of Moms for Liberty. I have, and I am certain that Moms for Liberty members families attend school in D8, and I believe in, viewpoint diversity. So with that said, while I'm not a member of Moms for Liberty, the role of a school board member is to represent all, regardless of race, gender, any class that we put ourselves into. So while I'm saying that, I also want to be very clear that we have to listen, sometimes with discomfort, to people who have opposing views. And that's a skill, and it's something that is I'm very conscientious about, because you cannot represent a group, a constituent district, without being willing to have conversations with all sides and work to find common ground.
Now, okay, obviously you just mentioned you're not a member of Moms for Liberty, but if they were to endorse you for this race, would you accept that?
I am not seeking endorsements from any particular group. It's a nonpartisan race,
Right.
and my work is just centered around families and kids.
Now, what exactly, besides what you just mentioned to me earlier in the interview, what exactly are the other wants and needs of District 8, and how would you do that on the school board?
Okay. So we talked a little bit about, uh, the partnerships with the other partnerships with recreation, city, county space for additional, after school, summer programming, type things. I think every area is always competing with high, the best teachers, right? And teachers want to work in places that have great leadership, and they want to work in places where they feel supported. And so that's always constant priority. And then just community members who have elected representatives want to have someone that they feel is advocating on their behalf. And so those are all things that for D8 that I'm committed to do.
And speaking of obviously community members, in what way did you by chance support the naming of the district school to be named after Esau Jenkins?
The naming of the new school is Johns Island Elementary. So I was, as the School Improvement Council representative
Right.
for Zion, I was all the School Improvement Council chairs were asked to serve on the naming committee
Right.
for that new school, which I did serve. It is Mount Zion who, in fact, recommended many years ago on their school improvement bulletin to parents that the name be Esau Jenkins. It was during my time on the committee
Right.
with folks who have been on Johns Island a lot longer than I have, and frankly do not look like me, who put together some really compelling reasons why the school name should be Johns Island Elementary and have a very specific focus on honoring not just Esau. A lot of conversation about Janie and her contributions and the lack of things that have Janie Jenkins' name on it. A lot of conversations about the Washington couple, a lot of conversations about some pretty key folks who had significant impacts on education on Johns Island, and having places in the building and reflect and honor them so that the campus itself gave some honor to Johns Island and some pride to Johns Island, but and then honoring those folks in some way. So you asked me what my role was. My role was to represent Mount Zion Elementary as their school improvement council, not my personal or my thoughts, but really the role to represent them. And it was based on the conversations in the committee that came back. And then we all, there was a vote taken, and today the board, obviously of trustees, decides overall, but a recommendation was given and the board voted to take the recommendation of the committee, which was to name the school Johns Island Elementary.
Now, if you were to be elected on the board, what other way would you help honor Esau Jenkins because of his contribution to education?
Yeah, so there's a commitment by the principal for Johns Island Elementary to do this work, and Quintin, I have no doubt it's going to be incredible. There have already been so many ideas set forth, not just for Esau, again for Janie, for the Washingtons,
Yes,
for many folks, and frankly, the conversation on the committee is around that we don't know who the next folks we need to honor, and we don't know who will come out of St. John's that will be honored in the school someday, but that some murals and real significant things will happen that will honor those folks.
And in 20 seconds, obviously, a big discussion right now in the school board is about TIF. Obviously, there's some discussion about the union peer TIF. And
Yep.
I know the Charleston City Council passed its first reading, if I'm not mistaken. Might be wrong about that. Do you
Right.
support a TIF? And would you support a TIF on the school district board?
Quintin, yep. I need to get educated on that. I'm not on the school board today. I don't have all the facts around it. I don't want to provide a position until I get informed.
Michelle Faust, thank you for your time on Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks, Quintin. Take care.
Thank you. Likewise.